What is good, YouTube? Quinn Wade basketball analysis coming to y'all with another rebuilding. I like the response I'm getting for this series. I used to do it back in the day, and I had to bring it back because people liked it then, and I got more time now, so why not bring it back and people enjoying it? But we want to talk about the LA Lakers, a team that has a bright future. I've been saying that for many years, basically since they drafted D'Angelo Russell. Um, I feel like they had the right things because they had flexibility. They had cap room coming up. They had picks that was in the top 10 for the last couple of years, like Randall, like Russell, and obviously even Brandon Ingram. And then they was able to hit on a pick later with Kyle Kuzma, who has been a real positive piece for them as a guy and as a guy that accepted his role and did it well. And like Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka said, they was able to get rid of Nance, who I think has a lot of potential, and I like him and I like his style of play, and I did like Jordan Clarkson too, but they was able to get rid of Clarkson and Nance, um, and get a pick. But not only that, they got two picks in the later draft. I mean, later in the draft, but they was able to get that cap space, and you want as much flexibility because you are the Lakers. And even though this is a thing to tell you guys who they should draft, who they should do, they have the ability to absorb these people because of that trade of getting rid of Nance and Clarkson. And a lot of people is not talking about that. They talking about, will Paul George want to go to LA, or will DeMar DeRozan go to LA? They have the ability to take in these contracts by a trade, and that gives them that other option that people ain't talking about, because you rather just sign somebody because you're not losing any talent, you're just losing the cap space which you got to use anyway. Um, so you definitely prefer to sign somebody because all you're doing is losing cap space. But also, this team was able to take in that Brook Lopez contract, and he's now a free agent this year, and that falls off the books. Um, and people underrated that move. And that gives them the ability to get two max free agents. And the biggest free agents that you hear them getting is Paul George. You hear a lot of people saying that LeBron might go to LA. And that's because, even though they lost Kobe and Paul Gasol, they was able, just like Danny Ainge in Boston, to take advantage of their draft picks and take advantage of the trades that they was able to do, whether it was absorbing Brook Lopez by getting rid of D'Angelo Russell, who they felt like wasn't going to be the guy for them. And Ingram has been developing into a potential superstar slash star slash all star. Kuzma showed that he can play on this level and he only can get better from here. But you look at LeBron, you look at Paul George, um, you look at a guy like DeMarcus Cousins that I can see them trying to get, even though, I don't know if the fans will want that because of the injury, but, you know, is is very top heavy this year in free agency. So you definitely want to go after DeMarcus's. You definitely want to see if you can grab a Paul George. You definitely want to see if you can convince LeBron to come to LA. But one thing I would definitely say is, don't rule out trading. A guy like Russell Westbrook, for example, is from LA. I mean, from that area. And he would love to come play for them, but his contract is ridiculous, and I wouldn't want them to do it, but he can actually come to LA by trade. And another thing that I kept trying to tell you guys is, the thing about LeBron and Paul George, this is another thing that people don't realize. You're not going to be able to keep a Brandon Ingram and keep a Kyle Kuzma if you bring in LeBron, if you bring in Paul George, because they're going to take Kuzma and Brandon Ingram role. And I said that a couple months ago, that even if they get LeBron and Paul George, you might have to get rid of a Brandon Ingram or a Kyle Kuzma, and most likely you might have to let Julius Randle walk for nothing. I know that he's a restricted free agent, but teams have the ability to offer Julius Randle whatever they want, kind of like what happened to Chandler Parsons. But the guy really don't have. I mean, you really don't want to get him because he's not going to be a superstar free agent. Like, Julius Randle is more of an option that if all our options are exhausted and fails, we can always just, match or work out a contract with Julius Randle because he hasn't personally to me shown that he has superstar potential and dominant potential. Now he showed that he can play. He showed that he can be a starter, and he still is young, and he still can potentially become something bigger than what we think he is. But as of right now, I wouldn't want Julius Randle, just like Larry Nance. He showed the same type of potential, but they had to let him go to get these guaranteed superstars. But you have to give credit to the Lakers for being able to stay flexible, be able to let go of some young players, trust that they can get some undrafted people like Josh Hart, for example, trusting that they trust in their scouts, studying footage, and getting a guy like Kyle Kuzma because if they don't get a big name free agent via, free agency, which is a big possibility that they may not, because nobody is saying it's a guarantee that LeBron is going to go there, and people know that just adding Paul George, it might be a building block to get other stars, but it's realistically, if you come out of this summer just with Paul George, I'm not really, if I'm a Laker fan, I'm not really satisfied with that because I don't even know if that's good enough. They won 8 games with Russell and Paul George. I don't think you getting to the playoffs guaranteed just by having Paul George, Ingram, and Kuzma in them. Now he is an upgrade, and you rather have them, but he's going to take Ingram minutes. He's going to take Kyle Kuzma minutes, and he might not even be good enough to help you get to the playoffs by himself as being the guy and being the best player. Because like I said, him and Russ couldn't even get out of the first round. So you don't want to give somebody 30, 35, 40 million that can't even get you out of the first round. And you might not even get that second max guy. And LeBron and Paul George, they might mesh because Paul George can shoot and play off the ball. But other than that, I don't think you're winning a championship with LeBron and Paul George being the two best players on your roster. Um, in the Western Conference with the San Antonios, the Houstons, and the Golden State, and teams that's coming up like Minnesota, obviously Denver, obviously Portland. We don't know what these teams are going to do either, and their players this year too in free agency. So you have teams that will already be better than you, and you have teams that might stop you from making the playoffs if you just come away with Paul George. Like I said, best case scenario about that is, oh, they got Paul George. I want to come down and play with him in LA. And that might lead you to another big name free agent like Houston. They got James Harden. Then they was able to get Dwight Howard because they had James Harden. They was able to get Chris Paul to come over because they was able to get James Harden. And like Russell, he was able to get Carmelo and Paul George to come down there because he was down in OKC. No, they would never went to OKC if Russell was there. So having Russell allowed them to say, "Hey, I don't mind playing in OKC because Russell is there." So that's one benefit of having Paul George. I don't really see any other free agents going there besides DeMarcus Cousins. I think that's an underrated move because they have the cap, they have Magic, they have all that glory of they can give him the contract that he wants. Plus, they have young pieces around that can really make his transition easy because they can give him the money and they have young players that's developing. Plus, they proven that they can play. So you don't mind giving him the money because you still have those players that can still develop into the future stars that don't interfere with their growth. Like adding Paul George and LeBron interferes with some of your young players. Adding a guy like DeMarcus Cousins doesn't because you don't really have a center that you have on your current roster that's going to develop into a star at that position. Whereas Paul George will cut into minutes of Brandon Ingram and Kuzma, who really had a great season for them. And you got to remember, the Lakers have a couple more picks. And that's another thing that people ain't talking about, just like the trades. The Laker has two good picks and still got cap space to get some unrestricted. I mean, some undrafted and unrestricted free agents that, like we seen with Caldwell Pope, they gave him a 1-year deal for $17 million just to try him out. That's another way that the Lakers can go. We have cap space to get some of these undrafted guys, let them play in summer league to see how good they are, see how their talent is, and then we can offer them 700 to 2 to 3 million and pick up a player under that contract like they did with Josh Hart and get somebody that can show promise and somebody that can potentially be a rotation to a star at worst. And they got cap space to go after these players. Not only that, they have the ability to get another player by moving up in the draft. They have young talent where they have the picks in this draft, like 25 is one of their picks, and obviously they have another pick in the second round at 47, and they have a lot of young assets that people haven't been talking about that. They have the cap space to make a draft day trade, and they have the picks and the young talent to move up in the draft to get a player like a Bagley, a player like a Doncic, even later in the draft, players like Mikal Bridges, Zaire, or even, taking on Lonnie Walker. Or they can just go ahead and draft a Mitchell Robertson, a guy that showed a lot of potential and at his position and at his age, he can play that center position and they can move up and get him. They can just draft him where he's at if he stays right there or falls under. And at the end of the day, they can try to hit on the picks again later in the draft by trusting their scouts and trusting their development team to get the best out of them. And that's something that they have been doing the last couple of years is, like you seen about Brandon Ingram. He got better the last couple of years that he has played, which is these last two, his rookie year and this year, he has shown significant improvement. And like I said, Kyle Kuzma was a guy that they traded for, and he has shown that he can play at the NBA level and he can be a key starter or rotation player. Josh Hart is another example. So if they don't trade up, they can also draft solid rotation to quality players and go after undrafted free agents and try them out in the summer league and see how they fit and see how they go and try to get more value on cheaper contracts so you can either get another free agent or trade for them with young pieces like a Russell Westbrook, who people say he's in the trade rumor and they have been wanting Russell. Hey, we got Kyle Kuzma. We got the cap space. We got some filler contracts that we can potentially do to get Russell down here. And that might take up one of your max room. But like I said, people will come to LA to play with Russ. And you have another max contract that you can offer through trade or free agency to put another piece around him. But at the same time, you can still develop these young players. Like, they might not get those players, but they still have young potential. So I think worst case scenario, they try to keep their draft picks and try to hit on some later picks. Or best case scenario, they hit on their draft picks or they trade up in the draft by trading a young asset plus those picks or picks in the future and try to get a start on draft day, or either try to clear more cap space to offer somebody even more money, or they let Julius Randle walk and get more cap space to try to get that third max guy if they take a pay cut and try to build a big three in the future. Like, everything don't fail if they don't get LeBron and KD or Paul George. They still have other options, whether it's this year or next year, or just trying to build through the draft if they fail to get the big name free agents. But also they have the cap space in the future to where they can do the Caldwell Pope thing, like I said, and try to sign these young guys with potential to deals to try them out and take a flyer on them. And that's the best part about it, is having that flexibility. And you don't really know how a person will fit. You don't really know how a person will play until you actually use them or actually have them in your possession. That's why you see people like Moutier. New York didn't have a problem taking his contract because they want to see if they can see how he is, to see how his work ethic is, get to know him, see if he'll work, see if he won't work. But you won't know that until the person playing for you, or you have a chance to really evaluate his talent and see how he fit and how you can use and utilize him. They have the ability to do that on a lot of guys this year that, they can give these players solid contracts, or even like give them a deal that works out for them, which is a 1 or 2 year deal. Try them out, and if it don't work, then you find a way to let them go and focus on trying to get another free agent in the future, which is 2018, 2019, 2020, when more big name free agents will be available, and you will still have the flexibility of evaluating, having talent, and trying out guys undrafted through Summer League, through G League, through the draft, and say, hey, none of these players work, so we'll try to go after another big name free agent. And having that flexibility is powerful, especially for a team like the Lakers to have Magic backing them up, and as a recruiter and a guy that really takes winning very serious and has had success no matter where he has went, even with the Dodgers. So he knows, even with the WNBA team, he knows how to build, he knows how to be patient, he knows the caps, he knows what he's doing, and he brings a winning mentality, and he brings a guy that you know that's going to try to deliver championships, and that makes players gravitate to want to go to the Lakers because they've seen the success he had as his career, and they've seen the success as a GM and as a part owner. So that they have that going for them too. So just remember, Lakers fans, it's not we lost on Paul George, we lost on KD, we lost on LeBron, we lost on DeMarcus. You still have other options. You still have other ways to build towards a championship, and you still have draft picks. You still have cap space to use it on flyers and trying out other players to see if they will develop into a star or not. In worst case scenario, you have cap space to try it again in other summers or try to hit another pick in the draft or move up in the draft to try to find a superstar, which then you will have the cap space to sign them to an extension because you will have the money to do it. Unlike just signing a bunch of players to max deal just to fill out the roster, and then you cap strap, kind of like the Bucks are right now, and kind of like Minnesota is right now. They have the stars, but they don't have, or Portland, they don't have the ability to get significantly better because they pay so many players so much money, and now they don't really have the wiggle room to get the guy to take them over the top. So you don't really want to rush the rebuild. You don't really want to rush trying to chase a championship because you might get cap strapped and stuck in a mediocre position, and it takes a while to get back out of that. Plus, the players only get older and older, and that's years that you're taking off them from winning. So check out my website, analysisplayground.com. Link in the description in the comment section below. Check out my Facebook page, analysisplayground.com. Link in the description in the comment section below. And let me know what you think the Lakers should do, what you want them to do. Should they trade? Should they sign? Should they just wait for next year? Should they trade up in the draft? Should they just try to get the talent they can do? Should they just try to find somebody that can play? Let me know.